My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Karis Circle. Karis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Karis Books, and Karis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are also the school store for Agnes Scott College. I've met many of you in that capacity over at Agnes Scott, and many of y'all over the years through our partnership with the Auburn Avenue Research Library. I always tell Morris the Gardner, who is in the back, this is my favorite place to do events, also because we share our commiseration on what it is to be a very small team doing large-scale events over and over again. But what makes doing events fun and easy is when you have a village of people who are so excited to come out and support an author. And from the first time I met Ruth P. Watson in 2012, she had a village. And that's rare, unfortunately. So I want to honor her village tonight because you have been here for this multimedia feast, a literal feast of food, music, theater, and now we're going to have a beautiful conversation. I wish all authors had a crew, a dream team that hyped them up, that got them ready, that helped them get dressed. And so it is my job as a bookseller, because Ruth and I have been talking for months and months about this book, is that your charge is to leave out of here and tell everyone you know about this book, because we're trying to get it on the New York Times bestseller list. And that's not just for me, that's not just for Karis, to be clear. Obviously we think you should buy it from us, but anywhere in the country, let folks know we want to help Miss Ruth get on the New York Times bestseller list. It's her dream, and we want to make it happen. So I believe in y'all because when, a lot of people say, oh, I got a lot of friends that are going to come to my book event. Nobody has ever showed out like Ruth Watson. I underestimated her one time with Blackberry Days of Summer and never again. So I knew tonight was going to be special. Y'all are in for such a treat, and I'm so excited. I was told that we have all of y'all are special and important, but I was told that we have an important person in the audience. Mary McLeod Bethune's granddaughter is here, I've been told. So if you would like to be recognized, we want to say hello and honor your family's legacy. And we know many folks in this audience are doing incredible and historic work right now. One of those people is Twanda Black. Twanda has a bio that's too long for me to read, so I'm not going to do it, but I hope you already know that she is also a multimedia star across many platforms, many genres, has been a public affairs director for KISS 104.1 FM for over 25 years. Has done all the things. So if you're not already listening to her, what are you waiting for? Please get to know her work. There's nobody that we wanted to have in this position of interviewer for Ruth more than Twanda Black. So please put it together for Twanda Black. And finally, it is really my honor to introduce you to Ruth Watson if it's your first time meeting her tonight. She is a dynamic author of historical fiction across many eras, but also just a deeply kind and fun and generous person. It has been so fun to get to know you and to celebrate your work. I love to help people launch their books into the world, and even though this is not your first book, this book is a big deal. It's a big deal that it's on a different level of press. It's getting a different level of attention, so that's why we want to give it that extra hype and that extra love. So let's get right into it. I do want to let folks know that there will be a signing at the end, so you'll just bring your book up at that table where you bought books. We also will have an opportunity for question and answer. We'll figure out the mic situation, or we'll ask you to speak really loud and we'll reiterate the questions. But without further ado, please welcome Twanda Black and Ruth P. Watson.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've known Ruth since her Blackberry days. Ruth, how long ago was that?
Well, I suppose Blackberry Days.
The first one.
Was it 12? Okay. Am I speaking? I'm not
There you
speaking
go.
in the mic. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think I've known you before. I knew you before Blackberry Days,
You did?
but Blackberry Days was the beginning of the launch
Yes.
of my book career.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful and grateful.
I didn't
for
even know
all
how
of
long
you
ago that was, but
being here.
it was a while back. It was,
It's been a long
and
time.
I rebought the books again. I have them somewhere packed away, but I just bought them again so I could reread them because we're getting ready for Strawberry Days, right? Woo! So I had a young lady out here to ask Ruth what happened to Strawberry Spring, I think it was, Strawberry Days.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I wrote the story, and I submitted it to Simon & Schuster. And Simon & Schuster read the story and said, you know, there's a character in your book whose name is Maggie Lena Walker. Can you write about her? And I'm sort of upset because I want them to purchase that book, you know. I sort of needed the money at the time, and I was like, oh my God, what you talking about? So my agent came back to me and she said, Ruth, can you write the Maggie Lena Walker story? And I said, certainly, because Maggie Lena Walker has been in every book I've ever written, but nobody had ever asked about her. When I was researching Richmond, Virginia, I came across Maggie Lena Walker. Not Madam C.J. Walker, but Maggie Lena Walker. And I went and I kept doing research on her. She just kept talking to me. It was like, it's time for her story to be told. And I talked to some people who actually knew her family members, my soror, Johnny Booker. Others knew her family members. And they said, you know, you're writing this story? I said, yes, I'm going to write the story. And so I wrote the story. They liked the story, but I wrote it, they bought it before I even wrote the story, which is very unusual. Usually they force you to write the whole fiction, novel of fiction first, and then they go and purchase it. This time they said, you know what, I like your proposal, I'm going to buy the story. So that's what happened, and I thank everybody who contributed to it. You know, I won't forget Sheriff Johnson over there who's giving me this look like you forgot that you called me 100 times and asked me some historical questions, and I did. I leaned on a lot of people, which is what I do. I can't do nothing by myself. And in leaning on a lot of people, I came across the story of our host, our guest, Miss Mary McLeod Bethune. And then I read further, and my stylist told me, she said, you know, my grandmother went to that school, and she gave me an article. And in that article was a story written and interviewed by Dr. Sheila Flemings Hunter, Dr. Sheila Flemings. And I called Dr. Sheila. I sent her a copy of the article from a Florida newspaper. So that's why you don't have summers, you know.
In that roundabout way.
You know, you just don't have a Strawberry Spring right now because they wanted to hear the story of the indomitable Maggie Lena Walker.
So how many of you had heard of Maggie Lena Walker before this story? Not a whole lot. So when you read it, were you amazed by her? I felt like she was Superwoman. She was a superwoman of her time. So as you were writing about Maggie Lena. And I know that all of it is not, some of it is fictional, some of it is in your imagination. But how did you come up with that character? Or did you know this woman that did all of this, she had to be a superwoman?
Well, I did a lot of research. I went back and I researched her childhood, the time period.
Wait. Talk about her now. Let's talk about the childhood and her birth, because that part, that's the string that runs through the entire book, is how she was born.
Yes.
It just runs through the entire book.
Well, she was born in a slave home. Her mother gave birth to her at that home. I'm not sure if it was a true love affair or
There's some debate about that.
or a rape. But her father was a Confederate soldier. And her mother married someone who was also in that home, who later raised her. So Maggie had some horrific things to happen to her at a young age. She lost her father at about 12 years old. And her father it was presumed that he drowned, but he could swim. And we didn't know, as I became Maggie at that point, what the story really was. And from that point on, I just dug as deep as possible into the history of the Confederacy, the monumental state of Confederacy, Virginia, which is where I'm from. So Richmond, Virginia especially, trying to find out just how Miss Maggie Walker could have survived, and her mother, Elizabeth, or Lizzie as she was called, how could she raise a family after hearing about the death of her husband, who she loved dearly, who raised Maggie, who was the father she knew? And how could this person turn out to be such a hero in those times? Now, mind you, that was 1876.
And at that time, she could actually pass, correct?
Yes, she could actually pass. But if you understand history, as I do, and as many people who are historians, Dr. Sheila, we know, and Dr. Fowler, who just came in, Dr. Jonas Fowler, we know that it doesn't really matter what color you were in those period of time, because you caught it on both ends of the pendulum. You caught it from your own people,
Not black enough.
and you caught it from the other people.
Sure, not black enough, not white enough.
So she had to deal with a whole lot of adversity from the moment she entered the world. And of course, still today, people deal with the same things, same issues. And from that point on, her life started to change. Visiting the, Independent Order of St. Luke.
But she started at 12 or 11 she started very early going to St. Luke. And what happened to her? What was that spirit inside of her that just made her just stand up? She stood up at that time for me when she was a little girl going to the order.
Well, for one thing, one of the things that she sort of admired about the order, which is a fraternal order, was that the fact that they gave money to people who needed it. They helped families who didn't have anything. And because her mother had to work so hard as a laundress for her and her brother, she had a sympathetic heart, and so her empathy grew. And from that became leadership. She said, okay, well, I need to do something. I'm going to get in here, and I'm going to work with the juvenile here and see if we can come up with something that we can do for other people. And so she always had inside of her the desire to help other people. I don't know where that came from, but I think I could say where it came from. I could probably, as I put in the author notes, when you read the book, please read the author notes. You know, I put in there where things might have come from. Her family, being that her mother lived in a slave home, but the slave home was owned by a woman who paid her slaves before 1865, before the Civil War was over. She was way ahead of her time. People in her community thought she was crazy. They worked there, they lived there, but they also got paid a salary. So that might have came from that.
Yeah.
But also it came from the fact that her mother was a strong black woman. You know, she held her shoulders back, she walked high. When her husband left this world, she said, okay, my children are going to eat, and they're going to have a place to stay. And what did she do? She started a business, a laundress business. And she saw her mother as a leader and not as a failure. And many of us have seen our parents suffer for for who we are today.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice,
yes.
yeah. And that meant something to her. And from that point on, she got involved in movements.
She was phenomenal. I want you to talk about research for a moment. I told her she researched down to the dirt. If y'all read the book, you will see. You researched just every tiny detail. How long did it take you? And how did you do that? Where do you get those kinds of details from?
From everywhere. I talked to, you know, people probably don't believe this, but I had to channel, you know, the ancestors. And I said, you know, let me do Ms. Maggie Lena Walker justice. And I said, whatever I write, Father, you know, and then I talked to the universe, who is my God. I said, make sure that I don't discredit her family or anybody else who hasn't heard this story. Because this lady's story is so phenomenal, and it has been swept under the rug for too many years. For 120 years, it's time for the story to be told.
Research.
Research involves reading everything you can find on that person, visiting the place where she lived, understanding not only that I'm not only researching her, but I'm researching her friends as well. Because I want to know, Dr. Bethune, how did your grandmother get involved with Miss Maggie Lena Walker? But if anybody knows that, any strong women, men in here know that you have to have a tribe. And your tribe has to be the same kind, have the same kind of mentality that you have. Yes. They want to be, if they want to see a change, they got to be working on that change. They want to see everybody progress, not just themselves. And at times, you had to deny yourself and your family to get it done. So I researched everything. I read everything, not just on the web. I went to the library. I went to visit places. You know, I had to have it all. And not only did I have it all, Simon & Schuster verified that I had it all.
You know, and for those of you that have not read the book, there's a lot of cobblestones in that book. But every time she walked those cobblestones, I felt it in my feet. It's just something about those cobblestones that she walked every day and went door to door. She was just so determined. It was amazing to me at that time. And talk about the racism that she experienced, again, from both sides, but mostly from the men who just thought she was out of place. She acted like a man. They told her husband she was a man. You know, it was just crazy. But because of her strength, and she was just dog determined. You know, she had that dogged determination. They always said, well, she act like a man. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so interesting that they were even saying that at that time. Of course, we get that today, of course, but yeah.
Well, you know, it was in the 1800s, early 1900s. And women were supposed to stay in their place. They weren't supposed to do the things that she was doing. And any of you all, and most of the people in this room, are strong leaders. Know that when you lead and you do things, people have names for you. You know that. You know, she want to be a man. Why? Because she's doing what you should be doing? You know, she can't do this because women are supposed to be in the kitchen cooking and having babies for me and making sure my meal is prepared, but she did it all that. She did that too.
Now, I would have to say, though, at the sacrifice, she kind of sacrificed her family life a little bit for what she did. Well, she did her best, but, you know, it was a lot.
I mean,
it was a lot.
Will you please tell me how she sacrificed her family?
Well, for me, like, she didn't take care of herself. When you read the book, you'll see that she worked so hard. She was so determined. And I do believe that she passed on early because she did not take care of something, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I looked at that and I said, okay, well, what happened? How did she go?
Yeah.
But I figured from that sore that she wasn't taken care of. And was she diabetic?
Yes, she was.
Okay, yeah. So she just wasn't taking care of herself. Her husband didn't always feel like he got the attention he needed. And I mean, but she worked for her community. So how do you, you know, well, she didn't balance it. I don't think she balanced it. I truly don't think that there's balance in this world. Either you do some things a lot more than you do other things.
Well, I will say this, in defense of her husband. Say it, Dr. Sheila. Her husband was very, very supportive.
He was, absolutely.
Her husband took a lot of abuse himself from his friends and family.
Yes.
Because of the things that she was determined to do. So what I would say is this. The sacrifice has to happen for anything to happen. The sacrifice has to happen for anything to happen. You sacrifice time, you sacrifice money, you sacrifice your health sometimes for anything to happen. And that's exactly what she did. She had such a strong determination to make it different in her community of Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia. But that lady did not just do Jackson Ward. She went all over the country. She was the only black bank that survived. She had people who deposited into her bank as far as Canada. How did that happen?
Tell about the stories where the people, she tried to help them keep their banks, but they wouldn't listen to her because she was a woman.
Yeah, you know, everybody in here know what Wall Street does to you, right? And if you understand a little bit about the stock market, you understand, you will know that sometimes the stock go up on a rumor and go down on a rumor. If you ever hear your ex-president, Mr. 45, talk, you're going to find out that if he say the right things, the Dow is going to go up. He say the wrong things, the Dow is going to go down. Maggie Lena Walker was just that smart. She was economically proficient. She understood the market, and she had learned a lot by watching what other people did, particularly white people. She watched them. She learned from them. She took the abuse. When they called her the N-word, she let it roll off like the Deltas do. You know, she just kept going and going and going. And she said, we're not going to just stand by. My bank is not going down. So she had a meeting, called all the bankers she knew, said, listen, we need to start, pulling our banks together, putting our monies together. And of course, the dudes said, oh no, she don't know what she's talking about. But during the Great Depression, her bank was the only bank that did not fall. She consolidated with Consolidated Trust Company. So the people at her bank didn't lose any money, but everybody else went broke. So this lady should be talked about, not just in America, but around the world. She's not the first woman of Richmond, Virginia, Wall Street, as you certainly see in my book. She's the first woman of Wall Street, period. And we should understand and know her. We should know about her and feel very proud that back in 1903, there was a woman who had the audacity to try to make things different. And she said, let's buy from our own people. Put our money back. She watched the Jewish people do it, and she watched other races do it. Other races did the same thing. And she said, it's time for us to do the same thing too. And guess what? It worked. People had businesses, people were millionaires all over the country. And around the world, when she was talking to Miss Mary down in Florida, Miss Mary saying they're coming down here to try to tear us down. And Miss Mary and W.E.B. Du Bois and she got together and said, there's some things we can't control, but there's a whole lot we can control if we work together. Right. And so that's the same today, in today's world. That's the world we live in today in 2023. Like E.R. said, he said it, I can't do nothing by myself. And I'm aware of it. Most people are not. They say I'm a little bossy, which I am. But you can't get anything without trying. And sometimes you have to be a little bossy, and you got to be a little pushy to get your way through. But it does not mean that you're trying to take over or you're trying to hurt the people around you. It just means I'm looking out for you, not just me. So when I wrote this story, it was for us. It wasn't for Ruth Watson, because I wrote Strawberry Spring. You know, I like to write sex scenes and stuff like that. You know, let's be real, you know. If I can be honest with you, you know, we're all grown or gonna both be grown pretty soon. But historical fiction had to be for everybody. I had to write this book for everybody that wanted to know about us. And just to think that this book was hidden for so long. Had you known about her, you had 5 hands, show of hands. Just think how your life would have been different. And I think Ms. Pearl Clegg said it, it's inspirited in us. And when I said that, I said, she said, it's inspiring. She said, it's inspirited in us. It's the kind of story that gets in your spirit and says, okay, I've been trying to open this business, and there's been some obstacles, but there are no more obstacles because I'm gonna make it work. It says, you know, I've been trying to get a promotion on my job, and they said that I can't get a promotion no more. I'm gonna get that promotion or move somewhere where I can. You know, it puts in you a desire to reach your goals. And the fact that she was called anything and everything. You know, somebody said...
She was bullied in the alley.
Oh, yeah.
She was, I mean, I was scared for her. I really, when you read the book, you'll see I was scared for her. And the one thing I really loved about her is that she wasn't scared about anything. She carried a pistol. I like that. But she was also not afraid to go to the mayor, to go to the governor. She didn't care. And every time they switched mayors or governors or whatever, she went right on up in there and was like, I need to have may I sit? Because, you know, a lot of times they didn't allow them to sit down. May I sit? And some of them would allow her to sit, and some of them would not allow her to sit. But she said her piece each time. And the thing that struck me, her saying, we're not trying to bother y'all. We're just trying to have our own. And that thing, I was like, get it, Maggie Lena. Oh my gosh. But she was not afraid to confront whatever she needed to confront to make it happen for her community. It was a blessing. It's truly a blessing.
It is a blessing. And we have people right here amongst us who have done some similar things. And I try to talk to everybody that I know who has done some things. But if you haven't done much, I don't give you much time. And that's the truth, because I'm not gonna waste my time trying to convince you that you're important and worthy. I've been down and out. I know how it feels, but I also been up, and I know how that feels too. But I will say this about a lady that says she always gives me a frown or tells me what to do, bosses me around. Huh? Yeah, you too, Sheriff, but I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about a history maker amongst us. Her name is Johnny Brooks Booker. Johnny Brooks Booker, who's sitting right here, in her job for the federal government, made hundreds of millionaires, minority millionaires. Okay, give her a hand, please. We need to listen to people like her, because I don't know how to do it, but I know she does. So we need to start probably spending more time with each other, understanding each other, and realizing that it ain't about you. It's about us as a people. And I think we've learned that, you know, we're messed up. We're so messed up that somebody called me and said, you know, your book is going to be at a feminist bookstore. And I had to break it down to him. So what you worried about? Did you know, do you go to Macy's and ask the people in Macy's who run Macy's? When you're at the store, do you know who when you go to buy something from the store, do you say, who owns this store? Hell no, you don't. And you're not going to ask me those kind of questions either, because we're all in this world together. And we're going to treat each other with respect whether we want to or not, because that's what I'm writing about. Now, I can't tell nobody else what to write about, but Ruth will always write about pulling people together and treating people with dignity and respect. And I think that's what Maggie Lena Walker was about. Dignity and respect. Taking care of your own people, but also not mistreating the people around you, simply because you can. So, I can go on.
She never mistreated anybody, doesn't she?
Well, she sometimes had to. You know, she had to tell them, look, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do this job. They might have saw it as being disrespectful. But she wasn't. What she was saying is, I got to get there. The only way I can get there is through you, Woody. So the only way I can do is to talk to you. And if you tell me no, it's okay. But you got to tell me somebody else to talk to, too. So I think she did what she had to do to make us a better person. And I hope that you will read the book, because there's some fun stuff in the book, too. It's not all about your rights and all this stuff. There's things that happen. I mean, come on. You know, like the pistol story.
I love that stories.
I think it's a lot of fun stuff in there.
The store, I mean, she did a lot of just wonderful things.
Yeah.
Her children, her mother. There's some really great pieces in the book. I mean, all of it's great for me.
The first black department store.
Yes.
Did you know about that? She did that too.
She had everything that the white store owners had. So, of course, you know what they had to do. They had to shut her down. They had to shut her down. Because even some of the white people would come into her shop, and they had to shut her down. I mean, the book is fascinating, just fascinating. So we're going to wrap here. So we've talked about this, that, and the other. And we want to know if you have any questions about Maggie Lena Walker, or any questions for just Miss Ruth talking about her life.
And we're just going to have you repeat the question.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much for your work. I'm really intrigued though by the one with the title, and I wonder if you went through some working titles before, or how you determined that this really powerful right word would be the correct title for the book. And then secondarily, how do you determine that you write historical fiction and not a biography? Thanks again for the wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, we did. At first, the first title was Unladylike.
But she was sure enough a lady now. She was a lady.
Yeah, so we did. The marketing team at Simon & Schuster and I, we had many Zoom calls about the title. And I like Unladylike but I didn't want to single out anybody, because people take titles and turn them into something that they don't really mean. I wanted to talk about what she did and who was she was and we thought about it. We said, you know, she was just a right, worthy woman. Simple as that. Yes.
I love that title, and I'd like the unladylike, because that would catch my
The question is about Ruth's writing process.
I like to write early morning, late night. I like to write when my mind is clear. And that means I don't want to be thinking about anybody but the character. And sometimes that's very difficult in this day and time to just single out the character. But I write late at night and early morning. I like to write when it's quiet and peaceful.
Why the historical fiction and not the biography?
Well, you know, she has family that's still living. Sometimes you have to leave things to them. They need to write the biography of their grandmother. I put all the history in there. Everything in there can be verified, as Simon & Schuster did 5 or 6 times. You know, even told me, Ruth, there's no such thing as a black, a brown hue mannequin in those times. They weren't created until 1965. I had to go back and pull up the data to show them that she created one.
She painted them, yes, yes.
So we'll leave the biography for her family.
I have another question.
Yes.
Hi, did you also write the dramatic interpretation that started our program?
I did.
She was asking, did she write the dramatic interpretation that started the program, and Ruth did write that.
So my question is, when the main guy was referring to Mrs. Walker as Maggie, that kind of made me cringe a little bit, because this is a respected woman. So why did you decide to write with him to say call her Maggie instead of Mrs. Walker?
Because of the time period. Women, she was always coming up with ideas, and men didn't necessarily respect that. So I just changed it a bit, instead of saying Mrs. Walker, which was too formal. I wanted it to mean, I wanted you to think about that, and I'm glad that you thought about it, Allison. You did a great job by asking that question, because it's all about the mood. When I wrote it for the mood. And I hope it came across like that. I was back here, I couldn't even see the interpretation. But I do know that when they practice, when Leslie practiced and Eugene, I don't know where Eugene went, when they practiced, it was what I wanted them to interpret. I wanted you to understand that women weren't supposed to do that. And his anger, I wanted him to be a heckler, which he was. And I wanted Maggie to handle him, and she did.
You'll see in the book that Maggie had a few hecklers. Yes, ma'am. Will the book be a movie or another edition?
Certainly.
But not a part 2 to this, right? Maybe? No? No, because Maggie's gone.
It depends. I wouldn't be a part 2 probably.
What about her?
Maybe, I don't know,
Maybe what came after
I
her?
can't say, Twanda,
Yeah.
because for the right amount of money, and for the right story, I would do it. Yes, Dr. Yola.
I love the book. It's awesome. One of the things I would say to answer your question is, Maggie was a little girl, really, with all these men when she started working there with the young folks, and they saw her as a girl first, and they saw her evolve as a woman. But my question has to do with Mary McLeod Bethune, of course. We've had this conversation where she had my shero drinking wine, which I never thought she did until her granddaughter said, "Oh yeah." But I think where I differ with your question about her husband, and again it comes because of a Bethune historian. What happened to Mary McLeod Bethune was he left when he saw that she was very much like Maggie. And her husband
Yes.
knew what he was getting into, and he stayed. I want you to tell about the love scenes. So there are some love scenes in there.
She said, don't tell it. They ain't read the book yet. But he loved her from the time he saw her, which was very early on. It's a beautiful story. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So, Sir Watson, of course, we know there are a lot of sorority girls in the audience, and there's a sorority connection with Maggie Lena Walker. Could you talk about that a little bit so the whole world will know about her D9 connection?
Certainly.
All right, she's asking about the D9 connection.
Absolutely. You know, it was back in 1923 that her girlfriend, you know, like your girlfriend get inducted into the honorary a legacy of, what was it, Delta Sigma Theta. Her girlfriend, Mary McLeod Bethune, became a Delta in 1923. Am I correct? Okay. And she wanted to be in a sorority too, okay?
They're great.
Because they're great, exactly. And you know, and she had seen the 2022, the fabulous 22, the magnificent 22, get into the women's suffrage march in 1913. In the march in Washington, D.C., which they were told not to get into because black people weren't included. But her girlfriend got asked because she was talking to a lot of people too now. She was everywhere. She was all up in D.C., and she was talking to people and saying, you know, you're not going to do this. We're going to build a school. We're going to take care of our girls. And that's exactly what Dr. Bethune did. Well, in 1926, Zeta Phi Beta said, I want you. And she became a member of Zeta Phi Beta. So we want to say that they both were Greek, and they both worked very hard together. But because she was a Zeta, and her best friend was a Delta, it had nothing to do with their accomplishments and their goals. They continued to fight the fight together. And that's all I can say is they were just fabulous together. I'm sure there was an AKA somewhere. Positive.
All right, you know, that's all we have time for. We want to thank you. Can you please just give a round of applause for Ruth Watson, please? We need to make this book a part of our children's history in school. If you only buy it for yourself or your kids can read it, well, let's try to introduce it to our educational system as well. Thank you so much. We are signing at the table out front. Ruth will be signing, and if you haven't purchased your book, you can purchase your book there as well. Thank you so much.